Welcome to this rapid revision session on the Johnson County War, one of many range wars in the so-called Wild West in the period that we're studying. But what happened specifically with this one? Well, first of all, we need to consider the rivalry and the competition between ranchers and homesteaders. Why did these groups come into conflict? Ranching required huge amounts of public grazing land, around 2,000 acres or more. Ranchers used legal and illegal tactics, many of them quite dubious, to block homesteaders from claiming public grazing land that their ranching relied on. The homesteaders were usually a much smaller operation. They were claiming land under the Homestead Act, and they turned little pockets of public land into their own private farms, which they could own outright after 5 years of successful farming. Ranchers accused them of rustling or stealing free roaming cattle, and they also complained that the homesteaders' barbed wire fences harmed their cattle. So what happened in the Johnson County War? By the 1890s, the beef barons of Wyoming were powerful, but their power had been shaken. They frequently accused small ranchers and homesteaders of rustling. Convictions were rare, partly because juries of ordinary people rarely convicted small business people that were just like them. Things came to a head when homesteaders Jim Averill, pictured, and Ella Watson were murdered after a member of the powerful Wyoming Stock Growers Association, or the WSGA, Albert Bothwell, a rancher, accused them of rustling his cattle. As a result, small ranchers and homesteaders plotted revenge by setting up their own association and doing their own roundup a month in advance of the WSGA so they could take unbranded calves and brand them for themselves. In response to this mass rustling, the WSGA decided to launch an invasion of Johnson County. They hired 25 armed men, pictured below, and raised $100,000 to pay for the predicted court costs that the action would provoke. They put together a hit list of 70 men who, in the view of the WSGA, should die for the good of the country, each with a $50 bounty on their head. The invasion was a shambles. At the KC Ranch, Nick Ray and Nate Champion, pictured, held up the gunmen in a lengthy fight. Champion was killed. This gave time for Sheriff Angus to raise a force of 40 men to beat the invaders. 300 sympathetic homesteaders and ranchers joined in. Cornered at the TA Ranch, the gunmen were rescued by the US 6th Cavalry, and their arrest photograph is shown here. So they were, in one sense, rescued from being killed by their opponents, but also arrested for having started the range war in the first place. This seems like a pretty open and shut case. The WSGA had quite openly hired these armed men, put together a list of people that they wanted to kill, and set about doing it. The fact that it failed didn't alter that. So what happened at the trial? In short, it was a sham. Despite their obvious guilt, the gunmen and the WSGA basically got away with murder. The WSGA, using the $100,000 fund, hired the best Chicago lawyers. They successfully argued that the gunmen couldn't get a fair trial in Johnson County because it would be obvious that the jury was against them. The lawyers made the trial drag on for so long that the poorer people of Johnson County who were prosecuting them ran out of money to pursue the case, and therefore the case was dropped. This event was typical of the conflicts between homesteaders and cattlemen, so-called range wars. Perhaps it is surprising that it didn't happen more often, given the prevalence of vigilante justice. What I'm saying really here is it's not remarkable that this happened. It's remarkable it didn't happen more often. Some final points then. The war was sparked by tensions between the powerful WSGA, that's the Wyoming Stock Growers Association of powerful ranchers, and smaller ranchers and homesteaders. The spark that set it all off was the murder of Ella Watson and Jim Averill, who had been accused by the WSGA of cattle rustling. An invasion by 25 Texan gunmen with a hit list of 70 ranchers and homesteaders they wanted to kill was held up at the KC Ranch. The gunmen ultimately were arrested, but the wealth and power of the WSGA meant that justice was not served, and they got away with it. And that, in short, is the story of the Johnson County War, typical of how justice might not be served and that money spoke. Hopefully that was useful to you. I hope you saw it as a good roundup. And there is more detail in this story that you could always look up for yourself, but that's the basics. Thanks for watching. If it was useful, like the video and subscribe to the channel. If you've got a topic that you're desperate for me to do a video on, please pop it in the comments below and I'll see what I can do. Thanks very much again and goodbye.